Republican Senator John Hoeven on whether a deal can be done. What do you think, Senator?
Well, I definitely think we can get to a deal. I'm pleased that the results of the meeting today produced some optimism on the part of the leadership and the president. But I think we've already laid out the principles for a deal. Now it's a matter of getting it done.
All right. If the principles that you've already talked about include revenues, and Speaker Boehner agrees to a rate hike, not just, limiting deductions and that sort of thing, what would you think?
I don't think that he's going to agree to a rate hike. I think what you're looking at is closing loopholes, limiting deductions, and then getting revenue from growth combined with entitlement reform and better spending control.
But if it's a rate hike, Senator, if it's a rate hike, you wouldn't be for that because, as you know, the president has argued earlier this week that he doesn't think that the numbers are there to get as much from closing loopholes, allowances, breaks, and the rest than just a simple hike in the rate.
But the reality is, to get revenue, you need economic growth. And by raising rates, you hurt economic growth. By closing loopholes, limiting deductions, you make sure that wealthy people pay their fair share, as our president says.
But you think you can get a like amount of money from that, Senator, than just raising the rate itself?
I think that's the real chance to get revenue, because you have the kind of pro-growth tax reform that will stimulate economic growth. Look, if our economy doesn't grow, you're not going to have more revenue, even if you raise rates. So that, combined with spending control and entitlement reform, and I think there is a real mood in Congress to do this. So it's time to seize the moment and get it done.
I talk to a lot of your colleagues, sir, who seem to be saying, seize the moment, but get the moment the heck out of the way, because we want to be done with it. We know rates are going to go, or revenues, one of the points, are going to go up. Let's get this fiscal cliff issue behind us. Really fight the real war next year on simplifying the tax code, that sort of thing. What do you think?
Well, Neil, there's a feeling that due to the complexity, you've got to set the fundamental deal in place and then take some time to make sure you do it in a thorough way. But look, the deal has to be struck now. The pressure is on now. Let's get the deal done. Then if there's a short-term extension to make sure you get everything in place, fine. But not a small deal. We need the big deal now that we're talking about. Pro-growth tax reform, entitlement reform, spending control, the things that are going to send the signals of certainty to the markets, and that we're serious about getting on top of this deficit. That's what we need to get our economy going, get people back to work.
Your colleagues, Democrats, both Tom Harkin and Jay Rockefeller, are circulating a letter in which they say hands off Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security, in other words, off the table. Since that's a huge chunk of our spending and getting to be an even bigger chunk. How do you feel about that?
Neil, two things. Number one, you can't solve the problem. You can't solve the deficit problem that we have without addressing entitlement reform. That's number one. Number two, look, if you say we're not going to affect people who are 55 and older, but this only going to make bipartisan changes for people who are under 55, I think everybody's on board, both Republicans and Democrats.
So what did you think of that letter? Because that seemed to go beyond what they had stated in the past going into these talks, that everything would be on the table. If they've taken that off the table, obviously you guys have your work cut out for you.
No, you can't be taking things off the table. Look, we need to get the big deal done. That means everything's on the table, and it has to include all the elements that I just described.
All right, Senator, thank you very much. Very good seeing you.
Thanks.
Fair and balanced now to Democratic Congressman and Ranking Budget Committee.